Newbies get in. They don't know what they're doing. They go to Miss Johnston. She owns her house. She's 75 years old. She wants to get out. And they say, hey, I can sub to your house. I'll just take over your mortgage. Now the bank calls a note due. Who does the bank go after? Is it the newbie or is it Miss Johnston? It's Miss Johnston.
Correct.
Who's the foreclosure on? It's Miss Johnston. Whose credit is going to get ruined? Miss Johnston. That's always been my issue with it.
So you're winning because you're getting your price and I'm buying the interest rate and now playing the long game for appreciation and rents and all those things. Mm-hmm. That's the win-win-win scenario. And so that's one of my favorite deals. I would say sub 2 as a strategy. I mean, maybe the sub 2 community would hate me for saying this, but like, I think it's probably dying, like as a primary strategy. I didn't do a good enough job explaining the whole profile of what was being proposed. The seller was disappointed. And so basically the bank got notified. And so they're like, screw you guys, due on sale.
Let's talk about sub 2.
Yeah.
What is sub 2? Why did you use it? Pros and cons.
Sub 2, very simply put, is the process of buying a property subject to the existing mortgage, meaning that I can take legal ownership of a property and the mortgage that's on that property stays in place as it sits. The best way to think about this is that in any real estate transaction, there's 2 documents. There's a deed and a deed of trust. Deed equals ownership. Trust equals money. I can transfer the ownership of this property as many times as I want to without ever even talking to the bank about, their loan. It just stays in place. And a lot of people don't, sub 2's been happening for 100 years, but they just don't know that. But if you've ever heard of people transferring into a trust or an LLC or a holding company, these are all forms of subject to transactions. It's just changing the legal ownership of the property with the mortgage staying in place.
So why does the bank not care? Like, wouldn't the bank want to have a vested interest in who owns the property?
So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily that the bank doesn't care. I think that's an overgeneralization. Yeah. I think that in many cases, the bank cares more about their payment security than they care about owning. Despite popular belief, banks don't want houses. Yeah. They want payments. And so every mortgage has a clause that gives the bank the option to call that mortgage due if the property sells without the mortgage being satisfied. But in most cases, that doesn't happen because the bank is more interested in the consistency of their payment.
Is it that, or is it also they just don't know? Like most of the time they just don't know, I'm assuming, or do you think they always generally know and they're just choosing not to?
No, I think they genuinely don't know, but I think that I would say it's both and. Like I definitely in a sub 2 deal, we actually go out of our way to not inform the bank. So there is an element of secrecy, which is what makes it feel illegal. Right? Like there is an element of that that's like, and I really wrestled through that because I was like, oh, this is crazy. But the more you learn about it, the more you understand like it is a strategy that works and it does have risk and you have to know how to mitigate that risk.
There could be consequences or problems that could arise.
I would just say, it comes with a different risk set than another type of acquisition strategy. But all acquisition of real estate comes with risk. This one just has a different set of risk.
What about the due on sale? The due on sale is that clause in a contract that says, hey, if you sell the property, you got to pay us back. If you don't, we have the right to foreclose on you. That's, this is due on sale. Or you can get foreclosed. What about that? How do you get around it?
So that's the big boogeyman of sub 2 for sure. Like if you Google sub 2 right now, like any forum is going to pop up, due on sale, due on sale, due on sale. It's a real risk, right? So basically the mortgage says that if you sell the property, the mortgage contract says that if you sell the property, we have the right to call the note due on sale. So the right is the important part that makes it legal. It does not obligate the bank to foreclose or accelerate the note. The side of that is that there's a couple of things that you have to understand. One is that the bank does not benefit from accelerating the note. So the first thing that you have to understand is how to communicate, if this happens, how to communicate with the bank. We've had to be clear, and we've done probably 20 or 25 sub 2 deals. We've had 2 due on sale clauses. So which statistically is high. One of them for sure was our fault. We just didn't manage the process right. The other one I think was just the mortgage provider. They were especially, difficult to work with.
Why was the first time your fault? What did you do that?
We didn't update insurance properly. So basically what ended up happening is we changed insurance and didn't go through the proper process of adding the bank as the mortgagee and then notifying them that they still had insurance. And so basically the bank got notified when the first insurance policy canceled that basically we canceled their insurance. And so they're like, screw you guys, due on sale. And when we called them, they were like, oh yeah, well, first of all, we need to be insured. Second of all, can we see the contract so we know what's going on here? And they actually were like, yeah, we're good. There's about a dozen ways you can resolve a due on sale clause ethically, legally, and like as a true win-win between you and the bank. So again, it's just a little bit more administrative work and understanding, the who, not how. Like that's how I've been successful in it, is I've just got the best consultant that helps me navigate the transactions right on the front end, processed correctly through the transition of the property. And then if we have a problem, he helps us solve it.
Here's what I don't like about sub 2. And you could probably put this on every real estate strategy, but newbies get in. They don't know what they're doing. They go to Miss Johnston. She owns her house. She's 75 years old. She wants to get out. And they say, hey, I can sub to your house. I'll just take over your mortgage. And little old lady said, well, what about, blah, 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 blah. Like, don't worry about it. It's fine. Everything's fine. We'll just take over it. Miss Johnston leaves. Newbie puts a new tenant in there, whatever. He holds it as a rental. Now the bank calls a note due. And the newbie has no money. They can't do it. They don't know how to remedy the problem. Who does the bank go after? Is it the newbie or is it Miss Johnston? It's Miss Johnston.
Correct.
Who's the foreclosure on? It's Miss Johnston. Whose credit is going to get ruined? Miss Johnston. That's always been my issue with it.
We have to manage these things through the lens both of legal but also ethical. We literally, in our sub 2 agreement, and again, this comes from our consultant that we use, we have a 2-page addendum. It's called a sub 2 disclosure addendum. And it's almost too aggressive. I've had deals go south when they see the addendum, but we kind of want that because it literally says, if this happens, this is your risk. If this happens, this is your risk. And we make them initial, because I never want to get, and I made this mistake on my very first deal. I didn't do a good enough job explaining the whole profile of what was being proposed. The seller was disappointed at the end. Now, luckily there was no harm to them, but they were frustrated and they were upset. And, and that was a part of me just not knowing how to rightfully disclose. I pay $3,000 for my TC on every sub 2 deal I do. Really? And I refuse to do a sub 2 deal without him because I think he's written the book on it largely. He was, kind of one of the original guys. No seller that ever sells me a sub 2 deal is going to go into foreclosure because I have a process that ensures that doesn't happen. How that has to get resolved is up for any number of outcomes.
How do you negotiate a sub 2 deal?
The way that we negotiate it is we come in with our cash offer and we explain it to them. We go, this is what we can pay you cash. This is how it works, yada, yada, yada. If it does not fit their criteria for whatever reason, then we explain to them, hey, what if we're able to increase our price offering to you because you're able to offer us terms that make this deal more attractive to us? And it becomes this negotiation of price versus terms, price versus terms. And so that's how we approach it. It's like, hey, I can't give you 300 cash, but I can take over your 280 mortgage at 3% and give you 20,000 in cash. Would you be open to that? So you're winning because you're getting your price and I'm buying the interest rate and now playing the long game for appreciation and rents and all those things.
Can you walk me through an ideal situation? Maybe you have a real property you've done a sub 2 on, where does sub 2 just make sense?
I mean, there's a lot of situations. So the way we teach our students, or we've taught our students in the past, is that every real estate transaction has 3 motivations: time, speed, convenience, right? Every seller gets to choose one. Sometimes they get to choose 2, but they never get to choose all 3. So in a cash deal, we're looking for people who want to trade their price for speed and convenience. In a sub 2 deal, we're typically looking for somebody who's willing to trade their convenience for their price. They want the highest price, but they can't go on market for any number of reasons. So a practical example of that would be, the most obvious one is distressed sellers, right? People that are in pre-foreclosure, they're about to go to auction. They've now stuck their head in the sand for too long. They can't get it on market and sell it fast enough to beat the auction. That's like a textbook distressed seller scenario where we would come in and we would say, hey, I'll pay the bank to catch up your mortgage. We'll negotiate a price or terms or whatever the acquisition is, to keep you out of foreclosure, but I'm going to take over that mortgage subject to. That's a very common example.
And the beautiful part of that is they're going to lose it anyway. And so even if the worst case sky fell,
those are easy negotiations because they're like, well, my name's still on the mortgage. And it's like, yeah, well, your name's on a foreclosure for the next decade. Yeah. So we're actually doing those people a genuine service. The other scenario where it can come up is I did one deal with a guy who bought a house. I think it was VA. It must have been VA because he put 0 money down, bought the property. 2 or 3 weeks later, he got a job offer back. It was on the West Coast for his dream job. And he's like, okay, I got to go. I've got to move, but he had to be there in 2 weeks. Yeah. Well, even if he could afford to leave it on market, the problem was he had just bought this property. Even if he could sell it for the 300 he paid for it, that after real estate commissions and fees, he'd have to bring cash to the table to close.
Yeah.
So he had no ability. He was literally trapped in this property between I stay here or I take my dream job. And he didn't want to be a landlord. He didn't want to manage across the country. So that was another scenario where we came in and we worked out a deal where I'm like, hey, I'm actually going to pay full price for this property, but because your interest rate's good and I can rent it for more than the mortgage, I'll just take it over subject to. And all I had to pay for that deal was closing costs.
Wow. With a distressed seller and you're sub-2ing it, but then you got to put, typically they're going to want a little bit of cash in their pocket and then you have to rehab it. How are you ever recapturing those costs?
Yeah. So I would say distress in sub-2 is not typically rehab. Not typically. Sometimes it is, but not typically.
Okay.
But yeah, sometimes we rehab. I mean, with sub-2, it gets a little tricky, especially if you're doing zero down strategies. Because the way to do the zero down strategies in sub-2, if there's equity or rehab that you have to pay, is you've got to bridge it with a private money lender, which we've done a lot of. But then the question becomes, well, how do I exit that private money lender when the rehab's done or whatever? And in many cases for us, it's either been that the private money lender's a longer term person and it still pencils for us to pay them 10% or 12%, or we roll them forward. So I've done a lot of that where I've had like a private money lender for a year and then like the year comes up and they want out and I just bring in another private money lender, pay them off and keep rolling it forward.
Gotcha.
So there's a couple of ways to do it. I would say that the it's getting harder now because the interest rates are not as sexy. You're not finding nearly as many 2, 3, 4% interest rates. So I would say sub-2 as a strategy. I mean, maybe the sub-2 community would hate me for saying this, but like I think it's probably dying like as a primary strategy, just because it doesn't make as much sense to take over a mortgage at 6%, right?
Yeah. That's one of the things that we've ran into is because some of the best interest rates were 2020, 2021. And so they're getting locked into those, but then over the next couple of years, their house has gone up $150,000 in value. So they don't want to just give that up. They want some cash in the bank. So it's like, got to bring $70,000 and take it over, but then you're never going to get that $70,000 back.
I did one hybrid, we call it a hybrid deal. Basically what happened was the seller's husband had passed away. It was super tragic. She wanted out of the house, but she got a huge life insurance settlement. She was great. So a realtor calls me, because I'm the creative guy in town. And they're like, hey, we had this deal. Like she wants out, but like it fell apart. Like, what do you think? And she said her husband's like the last thing he said was never sell the house for less than $675. So she just had this emotional, like she was stuck on this number. And so I thought about it for a while. She owed like $300 at like 3%, but she had $375 in equity, but she didn't need any cash. And so I thought about it and kind of went round and round. And I'm like, okay, she needs $675. I know now, but based on an appraisal, it's worth $600. So I just went back to her and I go, hey, I just want to be really clear. Like this is a very creative scenario and I want you to think about it and, all of these things because I don't want you to feel like I'm trying to take advantage of your situation. Yeah. But here's how I would do this deal. I will take over your mortgage sub-2 for, 3%, whatever, for the 20, however many years they had left on it. And I want you to seller finance me all of your equity, but you're going to have to give it to me at 0% for 10 years. No interest. And the reason for that is because I'm paying you $675 for a house that's worth $600. And I'll pay all the closing costs. And I think I even built in there because they had an unfinished ADU I wanted to stabilize to make the money make sense. I was like, I want no payments on that for the first year. And she's like, literally at the table, she's like, you can do that? And I was like, yeah, we can do that. And she's like, done. Like, didn't even like, because to her, the pain was, I can't be in this place anymore. It hurts me. I don't need the money because I'm good. And you're checking all of my boxes. That's the win-win-win scenario. And so that's one of my favorite deals. And we all know, like for those that are listening, like if you don't know, I'm going to save way more than $75,000 in a decade on $375,000 in free money. Right. And so that's the win-win. I'm playing the long game. But, I think we've got $1,000 a month in cash flow in that place.
I appreciate you, man. This has been a lot of fun. So thank you for being part of my ecosystem and coming in the 50 and first deal and all that good stuff.